What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Lexi J Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lexi Johnson. This is my husband and co-host, Brett Johnson, and this week we are talking about short-term sacrifice. So we're going to talk about it in terms of, our relationship. You can also apply it personally, and we've got a number of different examples to talk about, but I feel like it's something that everyone can relate to because it's not just fitness related. It's not just entrepreneurial. You can really apply it to any number of things. I mean, you could apply short-term sacrifice to parenting and to building a family, being in a relationship, anything like that. So for us, just recently, especially in terms of business, I'll be the first to admit Brett makes a lot of sacrifices for me, for my business. And Lexi J Wellness hardly is just my business. It really is ours because he contributes so much to it. He is like the CFO. He's behind the scenes. Anything that is more managerial, more technical, it's definitely out of my wheelhouse. But Brett takes a lot of that load off of it. So I hesitate to just call Lexi J Wellness mine. It's definitely ours. And he's the one behind the scenes that makes it all happen. But that being said, like, I am the face of it. So I have a lot of responsibilities and obligations that are outside of what you guys see, or a lot of it, is in front of your eyes. It's the events and things. But Brett makes a lot of sacrifices for that because they're on weekends and nights, and I'm gone for several days. And a lot of times, just recently, I mean, we've had to cancel a trip in order for me to go to something. Brett had to cancel a trip. Actually, Brett was supposed to go on a trip of his own with his dad and some friends. They were going to go on a fishing trip to Canada for like a week, and just with some business obligations of his own. And then we're in the middle of having internal changes on the Lexi J Wellness team, hiring a new person that Brett was needed here, and he had to cancel his trip. So that is a short-term sacrifice that most people, and I can recognize that, most people would not be so easy and so accommodating, so quick to sacrifice those things. And they certainly would not let them slide as easy. But Brett does an excellent job of that. So wanted to brag on him, and I think he can speak a lot to it because you are always the first to make those sacrifices.
You're really bragging me up here.
Yeah. Live up to it now. But you really do. I mean, just your business, you have to make short-term sacrifices for yourself, for time and just energy investment. But I very rarely have to make those sacrifices for your business. And it's just the nature of our businesses also. But you're very accommodating, and every step of the way you have been accommodating and supportive. And that's huge.
Thank you. I'm
not too naive to believe that. I don't know that we would be at this point that we are. It would be so much harder if I didn't have someone that was as supportive and allowed that, because there's a lot that goes into it that people don't see.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Do you have anything to contribute?
I don't handle compliments that well, so it's kind of hard for me to respond.
Okay,
to
well,
that,
tell me more of your rationale or your thought process when we have to have those conversations where it's like, okay, this has come up and it conflicts with plans that we already had that, would be recreational or something more fun, quote unquote, more fun, but we have to cancel these because now I have a work obligation. Like,
yeah. I think it kind of all circles back to the discipline that we've created. I don't really see it as, I've trained myself, I suppose, not to see it as like I'm losing something. It's really just an investment. And I think that that's something I've just kind of subconsciously trained myself to do. It's of course, if I have to give up something that I really want to do, then in the moment it's like there's this decision that's made, and I'm like, yeah, this kind of sucks. I have to give this up, but in the long run, I'm going to be able to do a lot more if I take care of this now and poise ourselves for success in the long run. So I think I've gotten to where I have a pretty healthy relationship with short-term sacrifice.
Yeah, I think you have a very good foresight.
Yeah, and I don't really know what to attribute that to. I think that it would be really easy for me to like try to say that it's in my nature. And I think that would be a little egotistical for me to say that like that's just my nature. I think that it circles back to the lifestyle that we live and the fact that we hold ourselves to a high standard, and it's just a way of life.
Well,
really.
And I'm glad that it's not in your nature, because then if someone's listening to this and they're like, well, I mean, I'm too selfish to make those sacrifices, or I'm too short-sighted to make those sacrifices. You saying it's not in your nature is reassuring, because then it's a skill that can be cultivated rather than a trait that you were just born with.
And that's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. Is that it's nothing special or unique about me necessarily. It's not like I was born with this ability to like just sacrifice more than the average person. Yeah. I think it's this lifestyle that you adopt. And that it's cultivated through the daily actions that we make.
I was talking about this just recently with our videographer, Dawson, just because I had told him I was kind of relaying like the scenarios and just saying, man, it's like I felt bad for Brett because Brett had to cancel this trip. And then a trip we were supposed to go on together to visit a friend, we had to cancel that also. And they were both conflicting with my business. And I was just saying like, man, he's so accommodating and so... you just have such a good vision for the business and for all that goes into it. And I said, but also like speaking about you have a good way of acting as if, and in our episode where we talked about like six rules of life or anything, 6 ways to live your life. We talked about
change your life.
To change your life. We talked about acting as if, and in this instance, like if we are wanting to build this business in the manner that we hope to and that we plan to and that we have this vision for, we cannot operate, and say, actually, I have plans with a college buddy. I actually, wanted to go to this party. I actually really wanted to, go out, go to the bar, whatever. Mm-hmm. You have to operate as if you are that business that you aspire to be. Otherwise, you're going to stay wherever you are. And if you don't start practicing and, adopting those behaviors that are going to create that future, then there's never going to be a time where you just wake up and you have this business, you have this body, you have this relationship or this whatever. Like if you aspire to have, a really solid relationship, but you're still holding on to the habits or whatever that you had when you were single and in college, and you're not acting as if you're someone that would take this seriously, and you're someone that is, looking for that solid partnership, then it's no surprise that it never works out for you. And I'm trying to like bring it into other realms rather than business, because I know that doesn't apply to everybody. Yeah, no,
you're better about putting those thoughts into words. But yeah, I think that's a huge aspect of it, is because like we talk about our life and our business, about like what it's going to be, and we're always looking to where's this going to be in the future and what's next. And that can be a hard thing. That's a battle. It's like an internal battle as well, because it can make it hard to be present. That's kind of a different conversation. But I think that's something that you and I have just really trained each other to do. And we're both so invested in what the future is going to be that it makes it easier to make the decisions today, because we know that in order to get from today to next year and where we want to be next year, that today's sacrifice has to happen.
Yeah. I thought about that also, just like I've sacrificed a lot of sleep recently. But if I can't just like put things on hold because I'm tired or because I need to sleep a couple extra hours. Or at least in the rate that I expect my business to progress and that I want to progress personally, I have to act as if I am already at that position that operates at that level. So until I can bridge that gap with more employees or more resources, like I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of sleep. I'm going to sacrifice that fun. I'm not going to go to the lake every single weekend. I'm likely not going to be doing the same like really fun things that I see a lot of my friends doing, but I just have to continue looking at where I'm going and what my goals are, because it's just as simple as saying like you have to choose what you want most over what you want in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see all sorts of like, it's almost a cliche at this point to talk about like your 20s, and how you spend your 20s determines so much of what your 30s and 40s and 50s are going to look like. You see all sorts of like myths. I almost said MILFs.
You see lots of MILFs in your 20s?
You see all sorts of like memes. I like combine memes and GIFs in my head for a second, deciding which one it was going to be.
Tell us about the MILFs.
You see all sorts of like memes about it. Like if you follow like any like motivational accounts, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always talking about how you spend your 20s, how you spend your time in your 20s is going to determine so much about what sort of freedom you have, personal freedom you have, financial freedom you have in your 30s, 40s, 50s. And we're doing that, we're living that. And I fully expect that whenever we do get to our 40s, that we're going to be in a lot better position than the average person in their 40s because of these sacrifices that we're making now. And it's easy to say, like, you're only in your 20s once and, you're missing out on so much because, your body feels the best that it'll ever feel. It's the easiest to stay healthy as it'll ever be because your body as it ages is just going to make it harder, to stay healthy and fit. But I feel like that is just such a devil's advocate way of promoting bad things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and like I go back and forth because I can totally say or see like you're never promised tomorrow, so why would you slave away today and why would you whatever? But then I'm like, but also don't you want to build something? Don't you want to say that you have a mark on something and that you have, contribution? I am so contribution driven that I want to have value. I want to be found useful. And I just don't find any use in spending my time that way, which is kind of why I don't have a lot of hobbies outside of my work also. The majority of my best friends are all work related, which, I mean, many people could probably argue that that's not healthy or that's not good, but I also think that that's a really subjective statement of what's healthy and what's not when it comes to how I spend my time and who I associate with, just because that is my primary interest. That is very consuming of most of my thoughts. But yeah, I can for sure see where you're coming from.
Yeah. I hesitate to get off too far from our conversation, but I mean, like, forgive me, but like, this is, intended to be a message about the topic that we discussed, but it's also intended to be a conversation because you and I these are the conversations we have a lot of times. But that whole conversation of you're going to miss out on the best years of your life, I just simply disagree with it because I have a very long-term view of life. And I guess I probably have a different viewpoint on life itself. Because I don't view life as like this. While this could be interpreted wrong, but I think that whenever people come at you from the standpoint that life is such a fragile thing and you never know if tomorrow is never a given. I live life expecting that tomorrow is coming and tomorrow I'm going to be better. And tomorrow I'm going to keep building what I've already, what I've been working on thus far. And it's not that I don't value life, and it's not that I don't value every day, because I absolutely do. That's part of like the gratitude conversation that we've had very recently. Gratitude is extremely important. But if you live life expecting that I have to live this day to the fullest, I need to go all out today, like spend every dollar I've got, every disposable dollar I've got today. I need to make sure and burn it so I have the best time of my life today. Like you're always, because tomorrow's likely, very, very likely going to come, and you're going to wake up and think, shit, what am I going to do now? Like you're going to keep just digging this hole and digging it deeper and deeper and deeper. And by the time you do get to your 50s, because it's likely that you will, then you're in this shitstorm because you're probably financially illiterate. You're probably in debt up to your ears. You're probably not happy because you focus so much on satisfying yourself and satisfying every little, what's the word I'm looking for?
Urge.
Yeah, every little urge and desire that I've had along the way, just to make sure that I haven't missed an opportunity, that you haven't actually built anything. You haven't actually established a foundation of any sort. You've just been focusing on chasing dreams. And
I don't think that dreams is necessarily
dreams is probably
no, I just think it's like short dopamine hits, like simple pleasures.
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. But that's it was not articulated super well, but that's my viewpoint on it. I think it's just a poor way to go out throughout your life. Now, you can do whatever the hell you want, but I think the people that come to us and listen to us and are interested in what we have to say, they have this understanding that we have, that like it's daily investments that you're making into the long-term outcome.
Yeah, I would agree. And I also I feel like spending my time in the way that I do is just the most useful of my time on earth. I'm not promised tomorrow. I'm not promised a decade from now. However, if I passed away today, then I think that I would leave something at least that people would remember for a few months, a few years maybe. And I think that that's good. Like that tells me I'm heading in the right direction, because I'm not promised and something crazy could happen. However, I've spent my time up until now on something that I'm proud of. Mm-hmm. And had I spent the last 4 or 5 years, whatever, partying and just living for the weekend and, shuffling through a job that I hated in order to make ends meet and get just to the Friday night and enjoy that little reprieve from the job that I hate and the work week that I hate, then if I did pass away tomorrow, I think that mm-hmm. I wouldn't be satisfied with what I had to leave.
Yeah, and I think that there's like this level of human nature where, whether or not we're aware of it, humans operate way better when they feel like they have purpose. And I feel like it's super, super common in today's day and age for people to like constantly focus on, like their self-happiness, like making sure that they find happiness is like in all facets of their life. Like that's a great rule of thumb, but it's been applied so liberally that it doesn't actually equate to true happiness. Like happiness comes from finding purpose and finding something where you feel like you have meaning and you have value.
And personally, I'm a believer. I don't feel like happiness is a default setting, because I don't think that you would have any perspective of what happy felt like if you didn't have any perspective of what unhappy felt like. Mm-hmm, so if you never sacrificed anything, if you didn't feel that some like sort of, pain, then pleasure would feel nothing. Pain and pleasure are the same, like two sides of the same coin. And they talk about like on dopamine hits, if you don't experience enough pain, then your threshold for dopamine is almost too high that it's hard to reach. Like if you are over inundated with dopamine and, these short pleasure hits, then it takes a large amount of pain for you to reestablish that kind of that baseline. So I also think that by practicing those short-term sacrifices, and maybe it's as simple as just not snoozing, like it doesn't have to be anything like incredibly grand, just not snoozing your alarm, making a commitment to yourself and investing in yourself in the morning by waking up when your initial alarm goes off. You're making a little short-term sacrifice and it's paying off. And that initial like pain of waking up when you're super tired and the covers are comfortable and getting up, you're going to experience more dopamine by doing the hard thing and then feeling the effects after.
Yeah.
From like the, physiology side of things.
Right. Yeah, it's a great way of explaining it in like a real way, how the body responds to these things that we've just trained our mind to want, these short little dopamine hits.
Yeah, I think that we're just so averse to feeling any sort of discomfort or pain, and I say we as like society is so averse to feeling any of that. Like if you're uncomfortable and you're sitting on a bus or you're standing in line at the grocery store, you're going to get your phone out and scroll for the 2 seconds that you're not occupied by speaking to the cashier, or you're not loading your stuff up or whatever. Like we are just constantly inundated with dopamine that we have such high highs that we are like chasing the next one because we're fearful of feeling anything but that. And I think that it's a really good practice in self-care, because self-care is not just like bubble baths and wine and chocolates. It is telling yourself the truth. It's holding yourself accountable. It's doing the hard shit that you know you need to do to invest in your future. That practicing that self-care and holding yourself accountable to the standard that I think that you should establish as a human, that it's a good practice to kind of just level out that baseline. That way the happiness can be appreciated. You can have that awareness of what happy feels like compared to what unhappy feels like. Because the baseline is neutral.
Yeah. Whenever you were talking about like grabbing your phone in the grocery line for 2 seconds, it triggered so many thoughts, because I've discussed this with you before, like, and I hate to sound like any sort of hypocrite, because I'm sure if you've seen me with my phone in my hand, because
I'm horrible about it.
I mean, like for business, like during the workday and beyond, the standard work hours, it's just the nature of what we do that you're constantly communicating with people. So I don't want to be a hypocrite here, because there are moments where it seems like I'm probably just so invested in what's on my phone because I'm messaging somebody or emailing or whatever. Like I don't get on social media that much. I do get on some, but like I have time restrictions on my phone and I abide by them pretty well. And it's 30 minutes a day, if you're wondering. And that's not much.
It's eating up fast.
But what I'm getting at here is it drives me absolutely batshit crazy whenever and teenagers are the worst about this. But when they walk,
like such an old man.
When they walk into a room, and it's not because they're busy or they have things that is not what they're doing. They are on their phone because they don't want to spend one waking second where they don't look like they have nothing to do. Like they want they don't want it to be perceived that they're not cool or that they don't have somebody to talk to. It's like it's this trained thing that teenagers have now, where they constantly have to be on their phone because one, they're obsessed with it, but two,
I was gonna say, I don't think it has to do with perception as much as we think. It's just addiction, because I have it. I feel that as well, and I know you do too.
It's so bad though, to the point where like I think it's like kind of fun to like in a social setting to not touch my phone at all, and almost like test myself and be like, okay, I'm not going to touch my phone. I'm not going to take any breaks. I'm not going to use dead time to touch my phone, because it's a reflex at this point that people have, where if you haven't touched it for so long, it's like, I got to check it, or I need to see what's on Instagram, or I'm not talking to somebody right now, so I don't want to look lame by not, looking at something and, occupying my time. It's this nasty, disgusting reflex that's been created. And again, I'm sure it goes back to like these little short dopamine hits where you're like, oh, what did I miss? But it drives me crazy. That's my short little rant on that.
Got it, Grandpa.
I know it does make me sound so old, but I know there's so many people who agree, whether or not they want to say it.
I know, but I guarantee the majority, I agree with it also, but I'm so guilty of that. And I know you're guilty of that also.
I'm not saying that, again, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, because I'm sure there's times, that I do the same thing. But I make a concerted effort to not be that guy if I can. Like during the workday, it's different because it's work. But whenever like you're in a public setting, a social setting, and especially if you're talking to somebody, or if you're with somebody that's talking to somebody, like if I'm with you and you're talking to somebody, I think it's very rude if I'm sitting right beside you, just like scrolling Instagram. Like if I got a call, whatever. If I got a business text, whatever. But if I'm scrolling Instagram as you're standing right next to me talking to somebody who's probably trying to have a conversation with both of us, that is one of the most inconsiderate things that somebody can do at this point. It just comes down to
social awareness, I think.
Yeah, that is so rude. I think that's some like a societal thing that people need to figure out. Like that should not be tolerated.
Do you have anything more to say on sacrifice?
Sorry. Yeah, I told you we were gonna have a conversation, but
Was that that felt like a monologue.
we got off a little.
I'm typically the one that talks for a long time. My throat is very sore.
Yeah, you've had to talk all day. Yeah, you've had to fill a void where you've got one in the business right now. So, but yeah, as far as this whole sacrifice topic goes, this all pertains, to the same general ideology that you have to give up something right now, right in the here and now, and it's not always going to be fun. Like whenever you were bragging on me a lot, and I have a hard time conversing with that. Like I genuinely appreciate that you acknowledge that. Like that makes me feel really good. But I'm not here to brag on myself, but again, it's something that we've trained ourselves to do. It's
kind of like you train it in little ways every single day by getting up to your first alarm, by working out and doing the uncomfortable thing, because after that thing happens, after that workout, you're going to feel better.
Right.
Because when you snooze your alarm and then you have a late start to your morning and you're less productive and you don't get to start it on your own terms, you have regrets. But when you get up on your own terms and you get to do the morning routine, then you feel like your day, like you have control of your day headed into it. And it's just like continually, it comes back to just instilling that discipline and those daily habits, that it's kind of like in our memory bank, where when I do present Brett with something where it's like, hey, this sucks, I know, like we had plans, but now things have changed and he has to make a bigger sacrifice than just waking up to the alarm or just, doing a little workout. Then he's practiced it enough that he understands the long-term goal and he knows what the vision is. So I think that it's just like those tiny deposits you're able to pull from your memory and be like, okay, well, it'll be worth it.
And once you make sacrifices more often, the sacrifices don't seem like they're as big of a deal. It's no different than this pain that you're talking about. Your pain points just start to numb a little bit. It doesn't hurt as bad to say no to something after you've already said no to it once before. You just start to train yourself, and it's this mentality that you have that, no, I'm going to make the decision that's going to be better for long-term us, not for short-term us or short-term me most of the time. Humans are innately very selfish beings. Like you're generally going to make a decision for short-term you. Like you don't want to feel that pain point. You don't want to experience something that's not as enjoyable. That's human nature. But I think that you're the same way. This isn't just me. Like you've gotten really good at that yourself. And I think that that's the nature of being an entrepreneur. Like if you're in this to do above average things, you're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah, it's just, and you don't really understand until you're faced with them. You hear people say that you need to make those sacrifices and that they'll come to pass eventually, but until you are in the game, then you don't really understand the thick of it, it's why it's tough to converse with people that aren't going through those same things and navigating it, which is why it's a lot harder, and it honestly makes it easier for us to say no to those like simple pleasures like going out to the bar or going to the lake.
How long do you think it's been since we've been to a bar that hasn't been the lake that we went with your family? Like a bar.
I truthfully cannot remember. I can't remember the last time just you and I went to a bar.
I'm trying to think if I'm overlooking something where I just so happen to be there with somebody, but I seriously cannot remember the last time that I was at a bar.
I can't either.
Not saying you're shitty if you've been there recently, but that's just not the lifestyle that we've chosen to live. We have such different priorities than people that are our same age.
Yeah, I truthfully, to each their own, but I don't want to spend my time that way. I just feel like it's just not the best use of my time, and I have an awareness.
Not to mention the downside to your body, your bodily functions.
Yeah.
It's not just the social element or, the alcohol or, it's the effects of it.
Yeah.
Go listen to the Huberman Lab podcast on what alcohol does to your body, and you'll never drink again. In your mind. It's horrible on your mind. But that's a whole different conversation. I just think it's something that it's been ingrained in people, in like, for sure, like the millennials and Gen Z. It's definitely been ingrained in. Did I get the generation wrong? Because I'm technically like right on the brink.
No, but I think it's the older generations. I think that they live that way more so than younger, and maybe it's wrong, but I feel like,
just to clarify, they live what way?
I feel like younger generations, and just speaking generally, I feel like younger generations are more like entrepreneurial, are more, certainly like addicted to phones and all the media and stuff. But when it comes to like living for the weekend and shuffling through a 9 to 5 in order to live outside of that, I think that older generations are worse about that.
That is very true. That there is like a very well understood like norm that, yeah, you do your 9 to 5 and it's just work. It's not something that you try to do well. It's just, I'm going to do the bare minimum, and then I'm going to do that during the week. And then
you could do it well. I just don't think that there's much fulfillment. I don't think that that's very common.
But I think that was ingrained in people, though. It's like you go to school, you go to high school, you go to college, you get a 9 to 5, you do that your entire life just to make, average pay.
You said that they weren't doing well at it. I was giving them credit that they could be doing well at it. It just, I think it's not necessarily, I don't think it's something that they necessarily are fulfilled in. Whereas younger people are seeking employment and that something that fuels a passion or that they're fulfilled in, or if they're unhappy in the situation they're in, they're going to leave.
Okay.
I think so. Where I know so many people.
I do. It's definitely less common for people to get the standard 9 to 5 now.
Well, not just, maybe they do, but if they are unhappy or if they feel like they have that realization where this isn't where I want to be, they leave. How many people do you know are parents' age or older that are in a job that they have hated for decades?
Yeah, that's very normal for that era, for sure. Yeah, I get where you're coming from there. But I guess what I was getting at is I do think that our generation, again, I was talking about like millennials, Gen Z, like that, those two generations. Mm-hmm. I think that those two eras specifically, like a very focal point, whether or not like it's realized, of like the mentality is like, I need to do this thing that's going to make me very happy in the short term, and there's really no acknowledgement of what that's going to lead to later.
Yeah.
Like it's just there's no foresight. Like it's such an ignorant way of living your life, really. I mean, it's like an ignorance is bliss mentality, where they just prefer not to think about the repercussions of their decisions. Like, decisions have results, and if you're going to make this short-term decision that sucks, that's going to be way better for you long-term, then you realize that that's what you need to do, because it's going to lead to a better outcome. But then people just like turn a blind eye if they think that, well, this decision right now, I would prefer not to make it and make this decision instead because it's easier and it's going to lead to a worse outcome later, but I'm just going to turn a blind eye to that.
Yeah, I think it's just constantly like passing the buck and pushing off the thing that needs to be done. But you end up suffering more by avoiding the hard work than by doing it.
Right. And it doesn't even have to be like the hard work. It's just like simple stuff, like going and buying a car or a vehicle that you can't afford and signing on for like a 6-year note where you're going to spend all your paycheck on it and it makes 0 sense whatsoever. You could buy a house for what you're paying a note for on a car. It's just like these daily decisions, like these simple decisions that people make in today's world. I'm sure it is the same, I'm sure, a long time ago. It's just in different ways. But I feel like there's just so many, there's so many like low hanging fruit situations where people, they just can't help themselves.
Yeah, I just think you could summarize it in just there are a lot of shiny objects and it distracts them from the long-term view or the long-term goals.
Yeah.
Just a lot of...
It's really just sad. It's unfortunate that people get derailed from what could be a very promising future if they just make better short-term decisions.
Yeah, just little deposits day in and day out. And it doesn't have to be anything super elaborate or those it is just a short-term sacrifice. It's a minimal sacrifice, but it's those little cuts.
Yeah. And not to say, again, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, because there's things that we do, that we're far from perfect, but it's just, generally speaking, it's a rule of thumb to live by, that these short-term investments that you make today are going to have a very positive net outcome later.
Yeah. Speaking of, I need to make a short-term sacrifice. I think I need to record a workout tonight. As we were talking, I'm like, I should probably practice what I preach.
For those wondering.
And I've been doing assessments since 5 a.m., which is why my throat is sore.
Short-term sacrifices,
but it's a short-term sacrifice. It's, if I want to do what I hope to do, then I have to start acting as if I'm already a couple steps ahead of that. Otherwise, how will I ever get the opportunity to be there?
That's right.
So in the meantime, we're going to act as if. But I hope you guys had a great week. If you have any topics, any questions that you'd like us to touch on, you are more than welcome to send those. Email those to
pod@lexijwellness.com.
Yes. But we hope you guys have a great week. You have any final closing thoughts? You sound like you were about to say something.
Just go out and make some good short-term decisions. Yeah. It's so cool. It's so cool to see somebody do something now, like in the here and now, make a super small, easy deposit in their life right now, and just see that grow, to see the fruits of their labor grow in the long run. Even
when you don't see the fruits of your labor grow, I have so much more respect for Brett, or I have so much more respect for people I work with in business when I actively see them making those little deposits, those little short-term sacrifices like anything else. When I see you doing hard shit, I have my respect level for you, just it is magnified, because I understand that you have that long-term vision, and people, I don't know, I'm just attracted to people in that way that have that mindset.
Yeah. Because it creates a domino effect.
Oh,
it just promotes somebody else to want to do the same exact thing. Like that level of badassery, people want to live up to that. They want to do the same thing, because they're like, damn, I want to do that. I want to embody that mindset and embody just the general spirit of that sort of lifestyle. And it's such a powerful thing. Like whenever you see somebody hold the standard, no matter what, no matter freaking what, if they hold that standard, even whenever it gets so damn hard, it's so empowering. That's
what the word I was going to use is empowering.
It elevates everybody around you whenever you do that, and you hold the standard and you don't let anything fall.
Yeah. And when you start to let things fall, the cracks are formed everywhere. So don't think that negotiation stops in one facet of your life, because once you start compromising anywhere, it spiders. It's like a crack in your windshield.
Definitely. Good analogy.
Thank you.
Good analogy. Yeah, just go out there and build shit. Go for it. Make a small deposit today that's going to make you really, really happy a year from now.
Okay. All right, it's decided. I have to go record a workout. I'll talk to you guys next week. I hope you have a good one.